Welcome back, everyone. This is Dave from Core Production. My co-host Stacie here talking about the original Quantum Leap, Season 4, Episode 7, The Wrong Stuff. The episode's description reads as follows. Sam leaps into a chimpanzee used in the early days of the space program and has to save a fellow chimp from testing that will result in his death. Well, that is really unfortunate.
Yeah.
And I must say that it took me about 10 tries to get through that.
We're having a difficult day.
Yeah, every time I tried to record, I just burst into laughter every single time. Maybe I should have kept some of those for like a outtakes video or something along those lines, but I didn't think that far ahead. All right, so the episode was written by Paul Brown, last responsible for Nuclear Family, and the episode was directed by Joe Napolitano. The episode takes place on January 24th, 1961, and it originally aired on November 6th, 1991. Before going any further, I'll tell you a couple of things. One, this is not a spoiler-free podcast. If you haven't watched the episode, I highly recommend you go and check it out and then come back and give us a listen. Secondly, if you're listening on one of the platforms that this podcast is now available on, please follow and feel free to check out my YouTube channel, Quorum Productions, where additional content can be discovered, both Quantum Leap related and otherwise. If you're already on my YouTube channel, please like, share, and comment, and subscribe to our channel. All right, shout-outs this week.
All right, let's do it.
Yes, Ashley Wright. Didn't comment on this video, but commented on the other podcast, the Sinner Podcast. That's not why I'm shouting him out this week. He has a YouTube channel, as I mentioned before, and I've supported his channel in the past. He has begun a series of videos on the Euro Championship. And that's soccer, for those who are not familiar with what that is. But he's got a game going on. He's trying to get 50 goals with 5 teams, which, if you are interested, you can also participate in. And I'll provide the link to the video. He can explain this better than I could. But yeah, head over to his channel, and if this is something that interests you, and check out his other content, and subscribe to his channel.
All right.
Alpha. Okay, so he says, I am a hater of the chimp episode and the leap between the states, as these episodes break the cardinal rules. Don't get me wrong, I am against animal abuse, but I mean, come on. Maybe next episode, Sam could leap into an Australian stingray, and his mission is to stop his brother Stingray from killing Steve Irwin. Okay, first of all, I would watch that episode. Second of all, I don't really want to defend this, but I'm gonna a little bit.
Okay.
So, there's a little bit of a difference because chimps are basically related to human beings.
Right. I mean, they make a point of this in the episode, that we have a 99% DNA similarity.
Still.
Right. It's kooky, right?
Yeah.
It feels like this should be a season 5 episode.
Right. Yeah.
Season 5 where we start, like, going off the rails, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this always feels like it's kind of in the wrong spot where it's sitting in season 4. But there is, some kind of explanation given. It's not like he leaped into the family dog or something.
There is an explanation. Whether you buy it or not is up to you.
Right.
In this specific case, Alpha does not.
This would be a great episode for us to talk about who would have been a better person for him to leap into.
Yes, I think that's
there's a lot of human choices in this complex.
There is definitely a worthy conversation for that. Yeah.
And as to the point about breaking the rules, I like when we break the rules.
Well, in the case of the leap between the states, and I'm going to argue with him on that one, I actually really like that episode.
I really like that episode too, and yes, we're breaking the rules.
They do justify that.
But you can't, rules don't work if there's not an exception to them. Mm-hmm. That's kind of like the definition of a rule, right? Rules have to be broken sometimes. Otherwise, they're just, it's how it is, and it's not a rule. I don't know if I'm explaining that right, but you're going to remember when we break the rules.
Right.
So it's important to do it sometimes. Now, was this like the best episode to do it for?
This episode is really pushing it.
Right.
It's right up to the line. You could almost argue that this is a jump the shark moment.
And obviously we're going to talk a lot about this episode over the next hour or so.
And I will both be defending it and also pointing out the things I like while also talking about the things that I don't like. Because there's plenty in between.
What I just wanted to say is I don't think that breaking the rules is the problem you should have with this episode if you're going to have problems with this episode.
Right.
I mean, were we ever told a rule he must leap into a human?
No.
I mean, I don't think we're breaking a rule. I just think we are doing something out of the ordinary.
Gotcha. All right, so Mimi Gallup ends up taking the exact opposite track.
Okay.
This is one of her favorite comedy shows of the series. And she also said that she can't wait for our next podcast. She was surprised to see one so soon last week. That's because we met earlier.
Yeah, so we've rearranged our recording schedule a little bit. We're on a new kind of new path now. We'll see what happens.
Right. It is really based on my schedule and the things that we have going on. But yeah, so we recorded it earlier, and I just decided, what the heck, why not just drop it? I don't have to wait till Friday to do it, because it's not like, I mean, I have two, maybe three people who are anxiously awaiting this video. So, also, in defense of the previous episode, she says that the beating that Sam administers might stop him from hurting other women, since the justice system failed this. Yeah, okay, maybe, possibly, that's an argument. But at the same time, if that were the case, I would have liked to have had some kind of indication from Al or something saying that this helped prevent something.
Maybe even, that other marriage of his that's supposed to end in, what was it, like abuse charges or something?
Maybe that never happened.
Right. Maybe like they lived happily ever after. Or maybe he never married her in the first place and she had a better life because of it or something.
And I'm fine with that as an explanation. I just kind of wish the show gave that to me.
Sure.
But also, all right, so I'm somewhere in between where Alpha is and where Mimi is. This is not the, okay, so first of all, no, okay, I'm going to let you give your thoughts first.
On the wrong stuff?
Yes.
Are we done with shout-outs?
Yeah, we're done with shout-outs. Okay. So your thoughts in this week's episode.
Okay, so, I mean, I've already talked about it a little bit. Overall, I like this episode. I feel like we've had a lot of heavy episodes. The last 3 or 4, right, were like super heavy. It's nice to have something we can laugh at. I think the chimps are really cute and sweet. I like it. Yeah, it's silly. Yeah, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Yeah, there's lots of stuff we're going to talk about today. Yes. Lots of stuff. But overall, like, I like watching this episode. I think it's fun.
Yeah.
I think it's fun, and especially, like I said, it's in a bunch of heavy episodes came right before it, and we were just talking about this before we started recording, that there's some episodes I don't really love coming up in the next few.
Yep.
Some of my more forgettable episodes, some that, I'm just like, ugh, do we have to talk about that? So this one, I like this one. Stuck right in the middle of, like, heavy stuff and, like, kind of boring stuff for me. And it's fun.
Okay.
And, just to say, yeah, we can laugh about this. It's funny. Sam's wearing a diaper. We got animals, all this kooky stuff that we can laugh about. But at the root of it, like, there's also serious stuff going on in this episode.
Well, I think that's part of my problem.
Is that it doesn't know what it wants to be.
It's, like, totally inconsistent with itself. Yeah. On the one hand, you have Sam running around in a diaper.
Well, see, sure. Like, when we, as a fandom, talk about, oh, that episode, right? It's like, ha, 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 ha. It's a funny episode. But then you watch it, and it's like, oh, like, there's important stuff here.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the history of the space program. We're talking about animal rights and cruelty and animal testing, and, like, that's bad.
And there are some great scenes in that.
Yeah.
It's just... So, yeah, and that's my preference. My preference is for the more dramatic episodes. I tend to like the comedy episodes less. But actually, thinking back on the comedy episodes, they're almost always paired with some, like, heavy, serious plot line.
Sure.
That kind of contradicts the tone that's trying to go for. Like, I almost think it would be better if there were, like, if the stakes were lower for the chimp episode, as far as being a pure comedy episode. And another one I can think of is Animal Frat. On the one hand, that's he's a college student, and he's engaging in frat antics. And on the other hand, we have this serious, anti-war storyline going on.
Yeah, and people are going to die.
Right, and it's like the stakes just don't match up with what their intentions are for the episode. Like, I think it'd be better if we lowered the stakes.
Yeah, but also, like, would we want to see GFTW sending Sam just to do silly things? Like, would we have wanted to see the entire episode where Sam's goal was to save a cat from a tree?
Not necessarily.
Right.
But yeah. I mean, like, my biggest problem is really, when it comes down to it, is that this episode just does not, if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, it does not make a lick of sense. This is the worst episode in that regards, that if you think about it for more than 5 seconds, you will get a giant headache. And it's along the lines of Runaway, where he leaps into a kid.
Right.
8.5 Months, where he leaps into a pregnant woman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's along those lines, and I think this is the worst example of it. Like, replacing a chimp is much more ridiculous than replacing a boy or a pregnant woman, in my mind.
And another thing that I'm sure we'll talk about more, but I'll bring it up here, is this episode is one that can be used on literally both sides of the argument.
That also,
the big argument.
Okay, so yeah. Like is it Sam's body leaping around in time, or is it his soul? My preferred interpretation was his soul, because that actually makes more sense than his body leaping around in time.
Right.
Especially in an episode like Runaway or 8.5 Months, and in this episode. But either way, it doesn't actually make any sense. If it's his soul leaping into him, that doesn't make any sense. If it's his body leaping, that also
replacing the chimp. Yeah. So yeah, that's like the big topic, right? That's something we can go round and round in circles about, because they weren't consistent with it.
They're not even consistent with it in this episode.
Exactly. That's why this episode can be used on both sides of the debate. Yeah. And I like to debate. I can take either position on this and argue for it, right? Yeah. But at the end of the day, I feel pretty confident saying that overall, once you look at the series in its entirety, they're saying it's Sam's physical body there.
Yeah. And
because there are serious points where that's made, such as oh my goodness, what's the name of the episode with the legs?
Nowhere to Run.
Nowhere to Run, right. Examples like that. Examples like Trilogy.
That's the biggest example in my mind.
Trilogy is a very big example.
Right, where
Okay, so there's these kind of examples that, in my mind, kind of trump any example of the other direction, right? Where they kind of implied, he's just leaping into this person. Sure, that's been implied plenty of times. But then we have these big examples where it wouldn't be possible. And if we were taking the Ben Song approach, where they made it very clear Ben Song's body is hidden in the ethos somewhere, and it's the person he's leaped into his body who's physically present, you couldn't do a lot of these leaps.
Right.
You couldn't do Blind Faith. You couldn't do the ones we just stated, because it doesn't make sense if the leaper's body isn't there.
Right.
Now, this episode, The Wrong Stuff, is used by people on both sides of the debate.
Right.
Because, basically, he must not physically be there, because Dr. Ashton doesn't know that there's not a chimp there. She should know that this is a man's body she's touching and not a little hairy animal.
Okay, so...
Especially when she's, physically examining him.
Right. So, how exactly does the physical aura work?
It's visual.
Right.
It's always been said that it's visual.
So when he's talking, they should be able to hear him talking.
Well, no, we know they hear. It's okay. So it's visual and audible, I guess.
Okay.
Because they hear the host.
Yeah.
Otherwise, this wouldn't work.
Well, yeah,
most of the time.
Right. Because hey, your voice has changed all of a sudden.
Right. That wouldn't work when he's a woman or all kinds of places, or even anytime you're talking to a close family member, it would be weird, right? So yeah, it's visual and audible, but to the touch, that's a topic to discuss that I don't feel like the writer's room really wanted to answer.
Right.
And then on the other end, of course, you have the only reason this episode works is because his body is there.
Right.
Because he's able to swim. And the chimp is not physically able to do that.
Right.
So yeah, you have both sides of the argument very strongly at opposition in this episode.
Yeah.
And like you said, the way to get around it is just, you can't think about it too hard.
Right.
But of course that's what we're doing here, because we're deep diving and we're going to think about it too hard.
And I should have brought my bottle of aspirin, but I forgot to do that. Maybe next time. All right, so do we have anything else to say before diving in?
Why don't we get on to the scene by scene, and we'll talk about all of these things more as we go through.
Right, and we will be talking about it plenty. So Sam leaps in to what appears to be a space shuttle launch. There's buttons going around, there's shaking.
Yeah, he looks like he's a pilot again.
He starts freaking out, trying to get them to stop the launch, and then credits.
And we're told there's 15 seconds from blastoff. He's, like you said, he's freaking out. He's screaming, I can't do this, wait, stop it. And you know what was fun to think about? Is the fact that Ben, in the Revival series, got to do this exact thing.
Yeah,
he leaped in during takeoff.
Same exact circumstances.
Except that really was launching into space, and he really did go to space.
Right, and I think he didn't freak out quite as much as Sam did here.
I don't remember. He did, but he didn't have as much time.
Gotcha.
And it was whoa, instantly, boom, takeoff, and we're into space, which is funny because, I just recently rewatched that. because my husband's finally watching the
okay.
2022
so
series.
What does he think so far?
I think he likes it.
Yeah.
We've only gotten through a few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
But recently rewatching this, like I had forgotten that Ben got there before takeoff.
Right.
I remember using the argument when people are like, "Oh, he's never leaped. When did he leap out of the country?" Right.
Right.
And I remember making the argument, well, he leaped into space.
Right.
He didn't though. He leaped into Florida, at launch.
Technically, he then went into space.
He went into space, but he didn't leap into space.
Gotcha.
He leapt right before takeoff. So,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that fact, but having recently watched that and then watching this scene, I was like, oh, I see a parallel there.
Oh, okay. So basically, there's a parallel to that we didn't discuss in that episode that we should have been talking about Bobo the Chimp during that episode.
Maybe.
Okay, we were doing that podcast. All right, so after the credits, Sam continues panicking, which is not going unnoticed by Dr. Leslie Ashton, who's monitoring his vitals. She's played by Caroline Goodall. She has 85 credits, including something that I'm pretty sure you watched, The Crown, correct? You saw that show?
Yes.
So she was in one episode of that. And yeah, she did some other things. I'm sure you have more.
I have Schindler's List, Hook, and the Princess Diaries movies.
Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking about tonal inconsistency, those are like one really heavy movie and some lighter ones. So she eventually aborts the mission because, his vitals are not good. He's like basically on the verge of a heart attack or whatever. And as it turns out, it wasn't even a mission in the first place. It was just a simulation.
Right. So she goes and she removes Sam from this space capsule, asks if he's okay. It's funny because he's talking to her, having a whole conversation. Right. He's like, I've never been better. And notice right here already, Sam's walking with kind of a hunch. Like he's hunched over. Now you can accredit it in this moment to like, oh, he just like got out of this machine and he's like kind of wobbly, right? But it fits when we know like, oh, that's what he's supposed to be doing.
Right. So he ends up getting called Bobo after he's getting stripped down to his diaper, and she's like, wow, I've never known you to be so modest. And it slowly dawns on him that he is not in a human being's body, especially when he sees his mirror image. And the mirror image is played by... Just kidding.
Well, the mirror image. We don't have names of these animals.
No. Well, that's
you know where I didn't look in Matt's book. I meant to look in Matt's book after I took these notes for any other information, and I didn't have a chance to do that this week. So there could be some information there about like recording with these animals, but I don't.
What
I don't have
chimp's
anything.
Actual names were. So yeah, he does not react well to this at all. Leslie examines him, and he tries to tell her that he isn't a chimp, but she doesn't hear him. She tries to take off his diaper, but he won't let her. And I'm sure that disappointed many female fans during the time. Hey, look, running around in a diaper isn't good enough for you.
Yeah, it's interesting to note that this entire episode we're watching Scott Bakula in a diaper.
Yeah, I'm sure that
had to have been a fun week to film.
I'm sure. So, Corey, the other chimp, flings some food at him, which makes Leslie laugh, Sam not so much, and he tells her to stop flirting with Bobo. Okay, so later it's established that Corey sees Al.
Right. So yes, Corey is seeing Sam.
Right.
Like I'm taking that stand because when dogs, like it always seemed right that whoever can see Al can also see Sam.
Right.
Other than like maybe the Christmas episode, which was a whole different reason that person could see Al.
All right. So Al appears at the 5-minute and 30-second mark, cracking jokes about Sam leaping in too, and he even makes a bullfrog joke, which is kind of funny because that kind of ties back to what Alpha was saying about leaping into a stingray. But Al thinks this is great because he's part of the space program. Sam is less enthused. He's like, I didn't leap into the space program. I leapt into a diaper.
Right, and he's like, oh, you're a chimponaut. So Al's very impressed with this. And we learn that in less than 1 week, the first chimp is going to go into space. This really is what happened in real life. We are at the right date for this. January 24th, 1961. It was January 20-something that the actual launch happened.
Right.
The first chimp that went into space, his name was Ham.
Ham, huh?
Ham won this competition in real life.
Okay. It is also mentioned that Al was part of the space program as part of the Apollo mission.
Which we heard this before, right? In the pilot, he mentioned that he was an astronaut. here's where we really dig into that. Right? And we learn more about that. So he says he was part of Apollo, and he recited Genesis on Christmas Eve while circling the moon 10 times. Now, this is a real story, again, from real life. And it's funny because first time I watched this episode with Adam, he was like, he told me he's like, oh, that means he was part of Apollo 8. And that's what they, like, my husband's ridiculous with history, right?
Right, yep.
So he knew this story right from scratch. And he also was able to say right off the bat that doesn't work here. Like, just watching the scene as a first-time viewer, he figured it all out, which is crazy to me.
So wait, he said what doesn't work?
Okay, so in real life, the story that Al's telling here is the story of Apollo 8.
Okay.
And they recited Genesis on their 9th orbit of the moon on Christmas Eve, 1968. And the real astronauts involved in that mission were Bill Anders, Jim Lovell, and Frank Borman. But the problem here is that on Christmas Eve, 1968, Al would have been a POW. That's where that falls during that timeline. That's already established.
Well, that's pretty impressive that Sam, that he was able to make that connection.
Yeah. So my hypothesis stands here, and I'm going to stick with this. This is my new headcanon. Is the only way Al could have done all the things he claims to have done in his life, including this, he must be a time traveler himself.
Or maybe as a POW, he participated in the space program. All right.
I guess a better explanation is that this event just happened at a different time in TV timeline here, right? When he was one of the astronauts.
Yeah. So do they include information about everybody that participated in that mission? Or do they just have the main people?
I think that's it.
So, in other words, if I were to look up on like Google somewhere this mission that he's specifically referring to, I should see Al Calvici's name there.
You won't.
I won't.
No.
Okay. All right. So, Sam writes a note to tell people he's not a chimp, but Al thinks that the only thing that's going to accomplish is getting his brain dissected.
Yeah, he writes, "My name is Sam" on a piece of paper.
and Al says that he must follow the quantum leap rules, but Sam says the rules only apply if he's a human. Al ends up suggesting that he join the circus after Sam asks what is he there to do, and Leslie brings over Dr. Tucker because Bobo has been acting funny. He's played by Albert Stratton, which is interesting because we have Albert and then Stratton as a name here.
Yeah.
Both of which have connections to the series.
While we're talking about in this episode, Stratton is referential.
And we have 23 credits for him, including an episode of Star Trek Next Generation, 3 episodes of Baywatch, and 63 episodes of All My Children.
I have nothing different. So
okay.
There you go.
He died on April 26, 2011, at the age of 73. Sam shows him a pad, which Dr. Tucker thinks is a great physical joke pulled on him. And Al ends up leaving to find out more information. Leslie gets introduced to Dr. Wagner, played by
Dr. Winger,
played by Gary Swanson. He has 48 credits for him, including The Bone Collector with Denzel Washington. You got more?
I don't.
You don't? Okay. The fact that the fact that the chimps can't swim comes up, which will be important later.
That's an important thing that we are told right here in a conversation between Ashton and Winger. And we also got reference for the first time here that Dr. Winger transferred from Edwards, which is Edwards Air Force Base, which is where Genesis took place. Right.
And that would be a couple years after, after those events. Because I think that was like 58 or something like that.
Maybe 58.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Swanson and Leslie seem to hit it off. There's some flirting going on. Both doctors end up leaving Leslie and Sam, and they argue over Sam getting into the cage. Though in the case of Leslie, she can't really hear what Sam is saying, just what he's doing. And he ends up losing this argument. He ends up getting shoved into the cage. And I'm sure that was even more fun for Vacula to play. Later, Al appears to say that chimps and humans are very similar. This is the explanation we get as to why this is even possible in the first place.
Because Sam's questioning it. Yeah. Now, he should be the one doing the explanation. He's the scientist here, but he's the one questioning it. And Al's telling him that chimps have a 99% comparable DNA to humans, and that should be enough of a reason to know that this is possible. I mean, if time travel is possible, why not?
Right.
I mean...
So it comes down to either you buy that explanation or you don't, but that's the one they're providing. Sam specifically says here that he is in the body of a chimp, so that's part of what people could use as an argument as to whether his body is leaping around in time or his soul.
Right.
And that line initially really annoyed me because I'm like, don't tell me we're flip-flopping on this.
Well, we are, because we always are.
Right. I mean, like, I just, yeah. Okay, so people talk in the new series, or the
2022 series.
The 2022 series about breaking the rules that the original Quantum Leap said. And they'll go to examples like, well, the original Quantum Leap said this, and that's why, this is wrong and why this is bad. But I could point, for every single thing that Quantum Leap, the original series, says, I can guarantee you I can find somewhere else the series saying something different.
Right. All the 2022 series did was take a stand.
Right.
They made up their mind on which direction they wanted to do all of these things. And stuck to it.
So that's
one for the most part. Even they flip-flopped a little bit in things that we pointed out.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I didn't particularly... I didn't really care the stances that the new series took as far as to how this all works. I didn't care if they changed things. I just wanted them to take a stance and, stick with it and explain to me how it worked. And in some cases, like how the whole leaping thing, worked, was never really fully explained in the new series. But yeah, that's all I wanted. I didn't really care if they contradicted the original series because the original series contradicted itself many times.
Absolutely.
Throughout its run. So, let's see, where am I?
So yeah, Al told him he's Bobo the Chimp, which we kind of already know. He doesn't really have much to tell him. Right. I don't know why he's here, even.
Leslie arrives to give him a treat and points out that Sam has been very vocal lately. Al tells him that he is there to save Bobo. There's an 85% chance he has to get chosen as a finalist. If he doesn't, Bobo disappears, and if Sam doesn't leap, so will he. Okay, so here's a problem right off the bat. How do they know that Bobo disappears? I understand that later they get records, that basically conclusively says what happened to these chimps. But right here, we keep records about, chimps' whereabouts?
Yeah, I'm sure there's not a record that says, oh, we don't know where he went.
Right. Like, it's not like he has a social security number or any of these other things. So,
we learned also in this scene some more stuff about Dr. Ashton. She's 27 years old. Because, we don't have a chance to learn history of Bobo, so we're given history of Ashton. Right. She got her vet doctorate in London, but grew up in Cameroon, which is where Al's cigar wrappers are made, which he's happy about that fact. She's been around chimps her entire life. And what Bobo needs to get picked for is that tomorrow, the top 2 chimps in the program are going to get picked. They're the ones who are going to get launched into space. But in the original history, Bobo's not picked, right?
Yeah.
But if Sam's here to get Bobo picked, what about the chimp that was originally picked that now is not going to be picked?
Well,
are we not concerned about what happens to that chimp?
Right. So that's why I kind of think the mission was not about getting him to join, to go up into space.
Yeah, that whole theory just seems really weird to me. Like, oh, we have to save this chimp, but doesn't that just mean you're sacrificing the other chimp?
Right. I mean, I guess that is a point.
Definitely. I mean, 2 of these chimps are going into space, and the rest of them are not.
Right.
That's it. End of story.
So the other chimp disappears instead. So, that's a good point. Like, why is that chimp more worthy than Bobo is? Like, so, or vice versa, I mean.
Yeah, obviously we're not here to just save a chimp, right?
Right. So, Sam ends up sleeping, and he narrates the next morning that he had a great night as a chimp.
Yeah, he said it wasn't as bad as he thought it would be.
A military guy whose name I never bothered to get.
His name is Stern.
Stern?
It's on his uniform.
Gotcha.
His name is Stern. Now, he's not credited as Stern.
Okay, what is
he
credited
as? So there's 2 guys in this episode. This is the first one we meet. I'm not positive. I'm guessing he's first military officer because he's the first one we meet.
Okay.
But there's also second military officer. And the only reason I'm not positive that this one's first is because everywhere I see these names credited, second military officer's name comes up before first military officer. And I'm really confused by this, and I couldn't figure it out. But the 2 men, right? Yes. Stern's one of them. The other guy's name I couldn't catch. He has a name on his shirt too, but I wasn't able to catch it. We don't meet him until a couple scenes later. But I'm going to tell you both of them now because I'm not 100% which one is this guy.
All right.
So first military officer is Kim Robillard is the actor.
Yes.
He's in 1 episode of NCIS, 13 episodes of Heart of Dixie, an episode of X-Files. And he was also in Hook, which Caroline Goodall was in.
Ah, yes, okay.
And second military officer is played by Peter Murnick. He's in 1 episode of NCIS, 3 episodes of The Mist, 2 episodes of The Event, which was one of those really cool sci-fi shows that got canceled after the first season. He was in 7 episodes of Jag.
And we're sure it was canceled after 1 season and it didn't go on for another 5 seasons?
You know, I mean, it's... Listen, it's worth looking these things up now because I'm very sure that we've got some Mandela effect stuff going on.
In this specific instance, I know for a fact that series was canceled after 1 season. But yeah.
And you're referring to Early Edition, yes.
Yeah. I'm making that joke, yes.
Which we just recently learned there's 90 episodes of.
Right, yeah.
Who the frick knew? But yeah, neither of these characters are credited as anything other than military officer, which I find that in and of itself strange since they have names on their shirts.
Right.
So, yeah. But this one's named Stern, and Stern's this one, he's kind of the a-hole here.
Stern, I think I have my notes as jerkface in my notes. And,
I mean, I didn't actually put this in my notes, so I'm going to say it now before I forget. What is this dude's deal? Through this entire episode, he's like this ridiculous evil person.
Right.
What does he have against these chimps?
I don't know. Maybe it was like me and seagulls. Like a seagull once stole a hot dog out of my hands at the beach, and I forever held a grudge against them. But maybe the same thing happened to him. Maybe his hot dog was stolen.
He's really ridiculous, and I feel like we need some more explanation about this guy.
Right.
What is his deal?
As far as we can tell, he's just evil for the sake of being evil.
It reminds me of the character of Blue in Jimmy.
Yeah.
Where this person's just like ridiculously horrible.
In that case,
except
though, we get an explanation.
We get an explanation of what Blue's issue is.
Right.
We don't find out what the heck is Stern's deal. Right. He's just a miserable human being.
And he wants to take it out on chimps.
Right.
Yeah.
Specifically Corey.
Right.
He has a specific problem with Corey, which is really weird.
Well,
maybe she laughed at him or something.
Maybe after this moment, it kind of makes sense that he would continue to have a problem because she ends up spitting in his face or something along those lines.
But he like already had a problem with her coming into this scene. So yeah, he comes in and he's bringing food to all the chimps, but he's like abusive to Corey.
Right.
Like right off the bat, and then she spits food on him, but I don't blame her.
Right. Maybe she reminds him of an ex-girlfriend or something. But yeah, anyway. Leslie arrives, and the dude plays innocent. He's basically like, oh, I don't know why, she doesn't like me, so on and so forth. Leslie and Wigner talk, and he seems skeptical that the chimps can understand her. She mentions Corey is experiencing her first crush, and I guess this first crush is on Sam because Bobo's not here for her to act like this towards. Wigner says he's starting to know how Corey feels, specifically referring to how he's feeling about Leslie right now.
Yeah, so he's expressing some interest in Dr. Ashton.
I hope this isn't his first crush. This dude is like 50 years old, so...
Is he? I don't think he's that old.
No, I'm just exaggerating.
She's 27.
But, yeah.
You know what? This is one of those things that it's hard to look at all these characters in a show like this and not think they're all 40 or 50.
Right, because they tended to look older back then. They tended
to look older, but we also met them when we were kids.
Right, exactly.
So we had in our brains that these people are older than us.
Mm-hmm.
But guess what? We are older than half the characters on this series.
Wow, that is really sad. I'm going to go upstairs and cry, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so Wigner won't reveal what he's working on, but invites her out for drinks. I think she's kind of like wishy-washy on that. Sam ends up getting a drink, which he initially enjoys, until she mentions she mixed in caterpillars.
Yeah, his favorite.
Yes. Not Sam's, apparently. Wigner... Oh, wait, do we? Okay, so Wigner and Leslie continue to talk. We get some background on both of them. And really, honestly, these two kind of carry the episode, because Sam has no agency, really, in this episode.
Right, he can't talk.
Yeah. I mean, he can talk to us, but he can't,
in the background, we see Dr. Tucker taking notes about the chimps, and he's very unimpressed with Sam's reaction to, spitting this food out that he's drinking.
And I'll admit that the background stuff going on is actually pretty impressive work.
Yeah.
Because you don't see that level of detail in the
Again, this episode had to have been so fun for them to film, because it's just so different, right? Like, Sam and Al openly talking through the entire episode. Because nobody can hear them.
Right.
So he can say whatever the heck he wants.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so Dr. Tucker's in the background, unimpressed with Sam. He's not helping Bobo's odds of getting picked.
No, he's not. Once again, I kind of feel like this is not his real mission.
Of course it's not, but he thinks that's his mission, and he's failing.
Right, he is, definitely. So, yeah, so we get some hints of his motivation for doing what he's doing, which we don't even know what he's doing yet. But he mentions that he was in the military, he lost men, and I think he mentions that he wants to, save men in the future. Right.
So, and during this scene, she tells him she's not going to make it for the drinks, even though just like a minute ago she was like, "Oh yeah."
Right. She's already canceling.
She's already canceling.
That's not a good
sign,
the
chimps
dude.
need her attention, and she's like, maybe after the launch, we can revisit this then. And she starts talking about Cameroon and her father's clinic there and how she grew up with chimps. And so yeah, he's telling us about his history. He was a flight surgeon before going to Edwards. Again, that's Edwards Air Force Base, which we are very familiar with in the series already. And he said he was never as crazy as Yeager and the rest of them. And what he doesn't miss about Edwards is the funerals. He told us that 1 in 4 of the pilots at Edwards die.
Oh, wow.
Which kind of makes, what Sam did a little more impressive.
Yeah, he managed to survive that particular trip.
And now he mentioned Yeager. I looked up who he's referring to there because I was like,
that's an astronaut, isn't he?
I was like, is that somebody from the pilot? Is that a real person? So I looked it up. He's referring to Brigadier General Charles Elwood Yeager, a real life person. He was a Air Force officer, and he's the test pilot who in October of 1947 became the first pilot in history to exceed the speed of sound.
Okay.
So what he did was October 14th, 1947, he flew the experimental Bell X-1 at Mach 1. So it was the record preceding that record that Sam was there to break.
Oh, okay.
So he flew the Bell X-1 and broke Mach 1.
Gotcha.
And Sam was flying the X-2 and broke Mach 3.
Yeah.
So it was an earlier flight record.
Gotcha. So Al ends up coming with urgent information, which I mind you is not actually urgent information at all. It's basically stuff that he already knows, that the drinks are made with caterpillars. Right. Now, Al, if you're going to come in and like, oh, I got to tell you this is urgent, you should probably come with actual urgent information, not what's,
Yeah, urgent, don't drink the bottle.
I mean, it's not like the caterpillars are going to kill him or anything like that. He's already drank it at least once. And it's funny that before he knew what was in there, he actually seemed to like the drink.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that one of those things that like you can buy in the store, like covered in chocolate or something?
I'm sure. I'm not going to go out of my way to buy it.
You know who sells a lot of stuff is like the jerky store.
Okay.
You see it like on like when you go on vacation and you go to outlet centers. There's always the jerky store.
Yeah. Okay.
Where they have like 500 different flavors of jerky, and then they have like exotic jerkies. And then they have bugs. Oh. Like bugs coated in chocolate and coated in different candies. And I bet you they have caterpillars there.
You know what I'm most familiar with is you go to a museum of some type and they have that lollipop with the worm in the middle.
Yeah, I think they have those too.
Yeah.
At the jerky store. But if I get you some caterpillar candy, will you eat it?
Probably not.
No, but if we'll film it?
Maybe. All
right, we need...
oh, jeez.
Let's see, how many likes on this video and you're going to eat caterpillar?
10,000.
Oh, Jesus. Well, that's not happening, folks. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
10,000 likes on this video, you heard him, and he will eat the caterpillar candy.
Which means I should not ever have to do that. But anyway, for, 50 years from now, we got our 10,000 likes on our video, so I guess I got to eat that caterpillar now. All right, so he ends up getting a rectal thermometer. He initially thinks that the thermometer is going to go in his mouth. Yeah, not so much. He's then on the spinning thing that zaps him when he pushes the wrong buttons.
Now, that temperature taking is specifically one of these moments where Dr. Ashton should have realized this is not a 30-pound chimp covered in hair.
Right. So I don't even want to ask that question. I'm not going to go any further into that. But yeah, so he's on the spinny thing. He's pushing the wrong buttons and getting zapped.
Yeah, so Al's there trying to help him, but he's not really great at helping him. Al's having to like cheat by looking at the chimp in the machine next to him, trying to figure out what Sam has to do. Between Sam and Al, they finally figure out what the heck he's supposed to do, but at that point he's already kind of failed.
Right.
He's not being a very good chimp.
He eventually gets his reward. He doesn't want to eat it, but Al insists that he has to.
Yeah, it's like some kibble.
And then he washes it down, and once you know it's more caterpillars.
It's more caterpillars. And this is just such a fun scene. I love this. Like, Al and Sam, they did such a great job with this scene. Like, they're, like, trying so hard to, like, pass these tests, right? Like, they think this is the goal, is to get him to do this. And guess what? Bobo would have done so much better at this whole scenario than what Sam's doing. And it just looks like they're having so much fun. They're trying to be so serious. And we got the caterpillars, and it's great. I love it. It's great.
He does another test that he also fails, and then another, which is like when he's doing that
big spinny.
Yeah, the big spinny.
More spinning, but this is a big spinny.
Right. I definitely wouldn't pass this.
No.
But Dr. Tucker, big surprise, determines that neither Corey nor Bobo has what it takes to go into space, and they're going to be reassigned. Leslie argues with him, saying that, Bobo's been feeling really down recently.
Yeah, so Ashton, she's really pushing for Bobo and Corey to be the two. Now, I was a little confused by this, because doesn't she manage all of the chimps?
Right.
So why is she so set on Bobo and Corey being the ones?
Right.
Like, shouldn't she be advocating for all of them?
Right. Well, I mean, you can't send them all. Well, I mean, I guess you could.
I mean, you're picking two, but either way, they're two of her chimps, right?
Right.
We've got, like, at least half a dozen chimps in the room.
Mm-hmm. Now, are they going up into space themselves?
Yes.
So there's not going to be
this is 1961. This is pre, like, Apollo.
Okay.
This is our first test here to see, like, are they going to live through, going into orbit?
Right. Okay.
Well, I don't think they actually went into orbit. I think they just went up and came back down. I don't think there was orbiting involved. But either way, like, the whole point of this is to test this before we do it with human beings.
Gotcha. So Al tells him that the records reveal an autopsy for Chimp 52, which happens to be himself, and he died from massive head trauma. It is revealed that Dr. Wigner is using the chimps for crash helmet research. The jerk face, I think you called him Stern.
Stern, yeah.
Comes in to make fun of Corey and Sam some more. Corey once again spits in his face.
And this is when the other guy's with him, too. So we've got both military officers in the room. The other guy's not so bad.
Right.
Stern's the one who's, like,
evil.
He needs to not work with animals.
That's
what I'm going to say about it.
I think he needs to not work with anyone.
Yeah.
But, so after Corey spits at him, Jerkface ends up tranking him. Her, and takes her away. And apparently, this is the similar fate as Bobo, as Al eventually reveals that there was an autopsy report for Corey as well.
Right, which is number 63 is Corey's chimp number. So Sam's protesting, of course, to no avail, because that's not going to help.
Right.
They take Corey away. Mm-hmm. And the other guy, like the second officer, I guess he is, he says, the doctor Winger asked for us to bring him chimps number 61 and 90. Why are we bringing 63, right? Mm-hmm. He's like, this isn't what we're supposed to be doing. And Winger's like, or not Winger, Stern's like, it doesn't matter, it's a chimp. Who cares which one it is? So he says, take 61 and put her in Corey's cage.
Gotcha.
So now there's a chimp in Corey's cage, but it's not Corey, and they took Corey instead of the one they were supposed to take.
Leslie comes back and asks why there's another chimp in Corey's cage.
Right, because she immediately recognizes that that's Kathy, not Corey.
And plays charades with Sam to get an idea of what exactly happened.
Yeah, so Sam points to the door, and then he points to her name badge and her ring, and gets her to say that Dr. Winger took Corey, which is amazing, right? Now, she's not put off by this because she believes that animals really can communicate.
Right.
And it's true. Like, we know that's a thing. Like,
yes.
There definitely is some intelligence.
There is, like, many cases of chimps or gorillas being taught that whole, sign language.
Right,
Coco.
that whole, yeah.
Yeah.
And, even, like, I mean, I'm a dog owner. Dog's very different from a chimp.
Yes.
And I'm very confident that my dog understands a lot of human words.
Yes.
Right? They learn what certain words mean. Now, it doesn't mean they can understand, like, paragraphs, but they get a sense of what you're saying when you're using words that you use with repetition.
Right.
Like, they pick out language. And, of course, a chimp that you're literally working with day after day is going to be able to communicate with you.
Right. Leslie asks about why there's another chimp in... Oh, I already read that. So, eventually, Wigner gets involved. And he ends up having Corey returned and, apologizes for that.
Well, he says he's going to have her returned. Of course, he doesn't actually do that because she's over there still when we get there later. But yeah, the two guys are there and everybody's yelling at each other and, they're like, oh, we made a mistake, right? Even though we know this guy did it very much on purpose, taking Corey because he has a specific vendetta against her, for which reasons we still don't understand.
Wigner and Leslie end up getting into an argument about the research that he is up to, and the argument continues and turns into an argument about animal testing. Right. Now, this scene is really good. Like, I like the fact that we're not making Wigner like some evil asshole. He's given an understandable position. I believe he's wrong, and I think the episode itself takes a stance that he's wrong, but it's a reasonable argument nonetheless.
Absolutely.
And it makes sense coming from where he is coming from.
And it makes sense that they both have, like, strong opinions and things worth talking about.
Right, absolutely. This is a conversation worth having.
Right. Now, I do want to point out that by the resolution of this episode, we're not stopping animal testing. We're stopping one person's kind of perspective on how they handle it.
Right.
But we're not really dealing with the overall problem.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's something that, time will work on. But in the 60s.
I mean, this is even an issue, I'm sure, even to this day.
Yeah, it's a lot more regulated now. Yeah. Like, animal testing is highly regulated, and I don't know a lot about it, but I know that it must be in a much better place than it was in the 60s.
I'm sure that's the case. Let's see. Okay, so basically, Wigner wants to help save people's lives, specifically in the military, specifically the types of people that he worked with.
Oh, like this is where he says 1 in 4 people at Edwards die. Okay. So I mistakenly said that happened earlier, but this is where he says it. I specifically have that in my notes because they're talking about Edwards again and about, these pilots. And he's like, the reason we're doing this is, the same reason you're doing your experiment is you're trying to help astronauts not die. Well, I'm trying to help my pilots not die.
Right.
But of course, her argument, which is valid, is she's not doing things that they expect to kill the chimps.
Right.
It's possible the chimps die.
Yes.
But her main objective in her mission is to keep the chimps alive.
Right.
And his main objective is just to see how many die before he figures it out.
Right. And before this, basically Wigner says that he wants another male chimp. And that male turns out to be Sam, which they're trying to take. Stern is involved in this. The other guy's involved. And eventually Dr. Leslie ends up getting involved, and there's this huge fight going on.
Yeah, they all physically fight.
Yes.
Sam uses his martial arts skills as Bobo to kick the gun out of Stern's hands.
Right.
Like, I'd love to see that in Mirror.
Yeah. So I'm very curious as to how that looked when he did it, because there's no way that Bobo's legs extend that far.
And Stern even, says, oh, now the chimp knows karate.
Yeah, this is the worst example of the whole physicality.
It's funny though.
It is, but at the same time, you should see nothing and then the gun flying out of his hand. The chimp's leg should be nowhere near.
Or maybe his whole body jumped 6 feet in the air.
Maybe, but yeah.
Ash ends up restrained by security, and Sam does end up with that tranquilizer dart in his back.
Right. And so they basically put him. Yeah, he's basically put on a cart, and Al is dismayed, and he's like, "Oh no, Sam!" And he's trying to wake him up. Sam, yeah, okay. So they prepare him for the test. They put him into this chair. He's strapped in. He's got a helmet on. There's this thing that we see that's basically what's gonna.
Yeah, we can see imminent death ahead.
Right. Yes.
He's down for the count, though. Al is pleading with him. Sam, you got to get up now.
Right.
He's out of it. He's been tranquilized.
Right.
And we hear that the test involves 5,000 pounds of force are about to hit Sam on the side of his head.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't sound great.
Exactly. Would anybody survive that wearing any kind of helmet?
Well, that's what he's trying to do, is make a helmet that's going to make that survivable. But this sounds pretty...
pretty unfortunate and dire for Sam.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a worthy test.
Yeah.
It seems extreme.
Yeah.
How about you survive lower impacts before you work up to these?
Right.
It doesn't sound like he's had any success keeping anybody alive at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Little crazy. But Sam comes to, finally.
Yep.
And the machine is, we see the numbers going up. It's getting to that 5,000 pound of pressure mark that we know it's gonna go off at. And Al manages to talk Sam through unbuckling himself from the harness because it's just like a seatbelt, right? And so there's not a lock on it. They just assume that, an unconscious chimp's not going to be able to get out of this.
And usually I would think that would be a pretty good bet. But I'm also guessing that the dosage on the gun, the tranq gun, is lower for, what you would actually need to knock out a human.
Chimp. Right.
Yeah.
So right. So that's why Sam was able to come to it quicker than Bobo would have.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's funny that, the guy doing the test, and I don't know if this was Winger himself or one of his people there, but he goes, his vitals are steady, and he's, basically they're saying that the chimp is good. The chimp's not good. The chimp's unconscious.
Right.
That's not, you're not even testing this right. Mm-hmm. He's putting in the research that, hey, this, we're representing a person just sitting there about to get hit. But no, he's slumped over in the chair unconscious.
Right.
How is that giving you adequate results?
Well, not only that, but I'm assuming that what's normal for a chimp, their vitals, is a little bit different than what's normal for a human being.
Right.
So either way, the vitals should be off, even if he was conscious.
And he said something about responsiveness being normal. No, it's not normal.
Right.
He's drugged.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's more humane if you're going to kill a chimp, to have him be drugged when you do it, but nothing about this feels like a good test. And we're really lucky that this type of test specifically eventually gets replaced with, crash test dummies.
Right.
Which obviously don't exist yet at this point. I think I meant to look that up when they started using them. But they weren't using them apparently in 1961.
No, I don't think so. So Sam gets out of this just in the nick of time.
Yeah, he manages to duck right when the machine punches where his head was supposed to be. And is that his head where Bobo's head is supposed to be?
I would imagine not, which is another problem. Yeah, I mean, basically if you're aiming for Bobo's head, then you're aiming for, Sam's neck or, torso.
Yeah.
So, and if you're aiming for Sam's head, you're basically missing Bobo's head entirely.
This might have made more sense if we were doing, ape or gorilla testing instead of chimp testing.
Yeah.
Just based on the size factor.
Sam manages to grab a tranq gun and then frees Corey, and they sneak out of the facility. Leslie and Tucker argue about the validity of Wagner's research, and basically Tucker says, "Hey, you have a differing opinion on this. So does Wigner. Who's to say who's right here?" Right.
And we see Sam and Corey, like you said, they manage to get out of the building. They cuddle up behind some trash cans. These scenes are adorable. Sam and this little chimp just keep cuddling up with him is so cute. Another scene here that I would have loved to have seen with the mirror, right?
Yeah.
A shot of the mirror of these two chimps making their way out of this building holding a tranquilizer gun.
I mean, we get a little glimpse of that later on when we see Corey grab a tranq gun, but...
Right, but, I want to see that play out, with the two chimps.
So, yeah, they continue to sneak around the outside of the facility. They end up climbing over a pipe over some water. I'm not even sure what this water is.
Okay, so... Give me a second. I lost my spot. Okay, so while they're still behind the cans, Sam's reassuring Corey, and he's like, Al's going to find us a way out. It's going to be okay. Al's going to help us. And he kisses her on the head. And that's when Al comes and gives him the escape route. So he's like, you're going to go here. You have to pass over this, lake or whatever it is. And
so that is a lake?
I'm not sure what word he uses. There's water.
Right.
I have lake in my notes, but it didn't look like a lake.
It looked like a puddle. Honestly.
Yeah, there's some body of water.
Right.
And honestly, it looked like you could have just walked around it.
Yeah.
But this was Al's directions on how to escape. Is you got to go over this body of water and then over a fence, and then you'll be home free.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my question before we get to that is, then what?
Right.
Bobo and Corey escape this facility over a fence, then what are they supposed to do?
Right.
They're just going to be loose chimps in, I think we're in Florida.
Yeah, okay.
So then what?
Not really sure.
I'm not sure this plan's great. Just escaping is helping them any. But Sam asks, well, they can't swim. Corey can't swim.
Right.
How are we supposed to cross this water? And Al's like, don't worry, there's a pipe that goes over it. You just got to cross the pipe.
Right.
So he's setting us up for this scene of what we're about to do.
Right. So they actually managed to do it. They climb over this pipe, which I'm pretty sure I would not have made it across.
Right.
I'm not very agile, I should say.
So yeah, it's Sam and Corey. Meanwhile, we see Dr. Winger caught up to them. He's in a Jeep.
Right.
And drove up to them. It's funny, he couldn't have just chased him on foot.
Right.
How far did they really get?
Well, they don't know how far they got, so I guess,
How far could two chimps get?
I don't know.
In a fenced-in facility.
Right. So Wagner basically does the same thing. He tries to go... Winger. I have Wagner in my notes. Sorry about that. So yeah, he's trying to cross on the same beam. He has about as much success as I would have, and he falls into the water.
He falls into the water.
And he starts drowning. And, okay, so 1, he can't swim. 2, is this water even deep enough?
Yeah, so this is what I have in my notes. I said, Sam goes back to rescue Winger, who looks like he's about to drown in 2 feet of water.
No, exactly.
This does not look like we're actually in a lake. It looks like 2 feet of water. It looks like you could just stand up.
Right.
Walk across it.
Yeah, it's not very convincing, but whatever.
But yeah, we're given the impression that he's going to die if Sam doesn't go back and help him, which is really ridiculous all around.
So Sam jumps in to save him and brings him back to shore. And this is just in time for Leslie to arrive on the scene.
And like all the other guys that have been around.
And he's like, I thought you said these guys couldn't swim. And she says, he couldn't, but somehow they did.
Yeah, so it appears that Bobo has accomplished what's physically impossible. There's been a literal miracle that just happened.
Yeah.
And of course, that's enough to give Winger some new appreciation of Bobo and, I'm sure for chimps in general.
Yep. And there's this kind of odd moment where, like, Winger is looking into Sam's eyes and Sam is looking back, and it's just really weird. But, I mean, not that this entire episode isn't.
And meanwhile, what's going on with Corey? Is she still trying to climb the fence?
Right, I think she's probably just stopped.
Oh, no, well, she came back at this point.
Did she?
Because she's here for what's about to happen.
She is.
So she must have followed Sam back across the pipe.
Not swimming, obviously.
Not swimming,
because
right. She must have just went back across the pipe, because she's on this first side of the water again. Because Stark now has the trank gun holding it to Sam.
Right. And Wigner gets up and basically gets in the way, and Stern, I think, it's Stern, right?
This is Stern, yeah.
Yeah.
I had Stark.
Stark?
Stern is his name. I
don't
know why.
Stark?
His name is Stern. I don't know why I have Stark at this point in my notes. Oh,
that's
my
all right.
goodness.
I have Wagner throughout my entire notes.
That guy.
Yeah. He's holding the gun. Wigner's like, basically, put the gun down. Like, oh no, you need to move. You're making a mistake.
Yeah, so it's Winger.
Winger?
Because it rhymes with ring.
Okay, so it's not Wigner?
Winger,
okay.
Because Sam was like, ring.
Well,
wing.
I'm glad I'm going to get that right at the end of this episode.
You're not.
So, basically, Wigner says, no, it's not a mistake. I'm correcting one. And he tells Jerkface not to shoot and takes the gun from him. Jerkface says he's making a mistake. Oh, yeah. No,
so this is when Corey gets involved.
Yep.
She picks up the trank gun that's just hanging out on the ground now.
Yes.
I'm not sure how.
Well, I don't know. Last I saw, Winger had it, right?
Yeah, but it's on the ground because Corey just picks it up.
Right. Maybe it's another gun.
Maybe it's another one. I don't know. Corey picks up this gun and she literally shoots.
Is it Stern?
Stern?
Not Stark.
That guy.
Right.
In the butt.
Yes. And, yeah, it's funny because Al's like, oh, don't say a word, Sam. And Sam's like, well, they're not going to understand me anyway. So, well, whatever. And, okay, so we learned from Al that Winger develops his helmet, but without chimps. Leslie takes on a shelter for ex-research chimps, so I guess she's out of the game. There's no information on whether, Leslie and Winger get together. I was kind of rooting for them as a couple.
No.
Apparently not so much.
I don't think that would work.
No? And Corey and Bobo have a baby, not while we're sitting here, of course. And Sam says...
So Corey's crush does extend to Bobo.
Yeah. Basically, Sam says, well, thankfully I don't have to be around here for that. I'm also thankful for that. I didn't want to watch that. And Sam ends up leaping.
But before he leaves, he kisses Corey again. This time on the lips. He's like, oh, I love you. It's super cute. Which means Bobo leaps back in mid-kiss.
Right.
How cute is that?
Yes. I was a little uncomfortable watching some of those scenes. But, yeah. Yeah, so that's the episode. It's ridiculous. It doesn't make a lick of sense. But, it is funny in
There are so many of those moments, right? Where it's like, this physically doesn't make sense.
Right. Yeah. But
because we know his body's there. And we prove his body's there by saying he can swim.
Right. So Sam's earlier line about I'm in the body of a chimp doesn't actually mean what the stance that the episode is taking.
Right.
But yeah, it's if you think about
it's messy.
Yeah.
They're very messy on that subject of what's physically happening.
Right. Yeah, they never really give us a good explanation, and actually the new series doesn't either when it comes down to it.
Yeah, they give us a more dedicated decision, but they don't explain it. So what does that mean for Ben's body?
Right.
They're quantum entangled, but what does that mean physically?
Right. So I actually saw an article recently, speaking of the new series, and I don't really have a platform to talk about this anymore because the new show is done. But there was an article, and I think you might have gotten wind of this from Thomas Bauer. Well, it wasn't written by Thomas Bauer, but he shared that on Facebook. And basically, it was about the original plan that the creators had for the series, which was to have Bakula more involved.
Right.
To bring him home at the end of season 1, and to deal with the ramifications of having him home while Ben is still out there leaping in season 2. And that does, in fact, sound really amazing. But, for whatever reason, Bakula just did not want to do this series. It could be he just didn't like the scripts. It could be he didn't want to do it without Stockwell, which is kind of my belief.
Yeah.
And, I think we pretty much know what Bakula thought of the new series because we heard him talk about it, and we can kind of read behind the lines. My feeling is that he just didn't like the new series, mainly because I think he thought it was just overly complicated.
I know there's speculation out there that he wanted to be the star of a revival series and not be a side character.
Possibly. So,
but regardless of what it is, we got what we got, and we can all cross our fingers that someday down the line, we're running out of time for this to happen in the world. But
yeah, Bakula's getting up there in age, and so is Pratt.
He may agree to do a project if they do the right project.
Yeah, possibly.
We know Deborah has a script she wants to use to make a movie. I really want to see that.
I would too.
It'd be amazing if we could make something happen. Mm-hmm. And even if not that, some way to continue the franchise of Quantum Leap, because who doesn't love Quantum Leap? Plenty of people don't love Quantum Leap, but we love Quantum Leap.
Yes, obviously we do. We just spent over an hour talking about it. But
we just spent an hour talking about Scott Bakula in a diaper.
We did. That's how dedicated we are. So 2 more things. One, something I forgot to mention at the beginning.
Okay.
Mimi Gallup. She, or not, I don't know. I don't know this is her, but there's a Mary Gallup on Facebook that likes those the Quantum Leap podcast posts that I put on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'm very curious if they were the same person. Maybe if you can clear that up for me, I'd appreciate that. 2, we haven't mentioned this yet, but I don't think we have anyway. We're in August. We are going to go see Scott Bakula once again. I
don't think we're going to get a personal meet and greet this time.
No, probably not.
Probably not.
It's still going to be pretty cool to see him do Man of La Mancha.
Yeah, which is amazing. Anybody who's listening to this knows why, in particular, that's amazing. That he's doing that show. And he's doing it with his wife, Chelsea Field.
And you know what? I'm thinking the week before we do that, we should go back and revisit that episode of Quantum Leap.
Have you covered that episode?
I have.
I forget when that episode is.
It was season 2, but that's an episode that we
haven't talked about together.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, maybe we should do that.
Yeah.
August is still a couple months away.
Yes,
so
it is.
We've got time.
We do.
But it'll be here in the blink of an eye, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yes, we're going to what's it called? Peterborough,
that sounds accurate.
Peterborough, New Hampshire, to the Peterborough Players. I might be saying the name of that town wrong because I've never heard of it before this happened. I don't know why, but that's the place where Scott Bakula is going to be playing in Man of La Mancha.
Yep.
And for a 2-week, there's a 2-week run. You can go to peterboroughplayers.org to find information about that if anybody is interested in seeing the show. Interesting to note that, like, their website does not mention Scott Bakula.
No?
I got a flyer from them after we bought tickets. Like, they sent us a flyer with all of their shows for the summer. There's no casting information in the flyer whatsoever.
You would figure that they would include it in the marketing.
Screaming from the roofs that Scott Bakula is doing this. It would have been sold out instantly. But the only way to know about this is, like, there was some articles that came out.
Right.
And then Scott and Chelsea did put out, like, a short that the Peterborough players did post it or share it. Just being like, yeah, we're so excited we're going to do this. But I feel like it's not widely known outside of, like, you know, it's been shared. We've all shared it, like, in the Quantum Leap groups and in the places we talk. And again, I've seen people all the way from Germany saying they're coming for this, like they did for the Connector. That's amazing.
Also, like the Connector, that once we do this trip, we're definitely going to do something documenting the trip. We're talking about, you know, filming us going up there. We're going with Adam.
Yes, my husband will be joining us this time.
So he might also join us for the podcast on that.
That should be interesting.
Yes, that should be interesting. Expect it to be, like, rather all over the place and inane, like, you know, any conversation that you occasionally would have with Adam. But
yeah. And pending any changes in plans, we're actually going to get to meet Albie and Serenity from the Quantum Leap podcast this time.
Yeah.
And we should be possibly seeing Christopher again. We already met him. And it should be fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun times.
Fun times.
All right. So, anything else to say about this episode?
I don't know. We got so sidetracked. I forgot if I had anything else. I think we covered it.
We did? All right.
You know, Scott in a diaper.
It's an episode of Quantum Leap.
Chimps.
Yes.
Silliness. Seriousness.
Yeah.
Don't kill animals. That's bad.
I would say that the scenes that are serious are really, really good in this episode. Like, the arguments they have are really good. So, like, you understand both sides of these people's, you know, perspectives. You get, you know, nobody is evil here. I mean,
that dude is.
Aside from Stern, who's evil for no reason that we can tell. He just really just racist against chimps, I guess. But
speciesist.
Speciesist, yes. That's a more accurate term.
And so, yeah, Sam leaped into dreams, which will be the next episode we cover.
You specifically mentioned that episode in our Quantum Leap podcast about Genesis, our little side video.
Our 35th anniversary video. Yeah.
As being one you do not like.
It's not one I like. It's kind of cringy for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know why exactly. So I will be thinking about that when I rewatch it to take notes.
Well, as you watch it, perhaps, like, you know, part of the premise of this podcast is, you know, did it age well?
Right.
Like, maybe it got better in your estimation when you watch it again.
Yeah.
As for me, when I was a kid, that episode creeped me the heck out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's very creepy, very dark. We have another tonal shift.
It's another one where I'm like, I don't remember the details very well.
Mm-hmm.
I just remember it being weird. And like you said, it's a little creepy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a horror fan, been a horror fan since I was 6 years old, so it's not like it scared me.
Right.
But I just remember it being like, ooh, no, I don't know. I don't know what. I don't know what about it. It's just something about it I'm not a fan of.
All right. Well, when we convene next week, I believe, we will be talking about that episode and examining exactly why you don't like that episode.
There is a chance we end up skipping Quantum Leap next week, because we do have some other stuff going on.
We do.
So there's a possibility we might have a week gap in this one.
Yeah, possibly.
Just because we have a lot of other stuff going on that we have to fit in. But keep an eye on the channel, because there's lots of fun stuff happening.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Including, we have an interview that won't launch for 3 more weeks.
Right.
That's not Quantum Leap related, but at the same time,
it does come up.
It is.
Yeah.
Should I say what
the
connection is?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
We have an interview with someone about the other series we covered, The Sinner, that's going to launch after we talk about the 8th episode of that series. That's why I said it's going to be about 3 weeks before this interview launches. But he actually auditioned for Quantum Leap.
And that would be Donald Hang, for the reference.
He auditioned to play Ben Song.
Yeah.
Which wasn't something we knew ahead of time. It came up during the interview.
Right.
Which we were geeking out about that fact. It's like, we're here to talk about your work, but, like, oh my goodness, let's talk about this role you didn't get, because we're so excited to hear that.
Right, yeah, you want to hear the details of that, yeah.
So make sure you tune in for that interview, even if you're not watching The Sinner, because we do talk about Quantum Leap during it as well. Believe it or not, we managed to bring Quantum Leap into every conversation we have.
And that interview also launched into interviewing him again for a movie that we're going to go see tonight called
Which is
Sight.
One of the things we have to fit into our schedule. Right. So our schedule might be a little weird for the next little bit. So we'll be back eventually with Dreams, if not perfectly in 1 week.
Right. All right, so we would like to hear from you. What did you think of the podcast? What did you think of the episode? Stacie can be reached at?
You can be reached on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Threads at TVN Coupon Talk.
If you like this video and want to support the channel, there are a number of ways to do so. You can follow me on Twitter at Core Productions. You can join one of my Core Productions Facebook pages. You can buy something from the Core Productions store on Zazzle. You can buy me a coffee. You can join the Core Productions membership for 99 cents a month. And of course, you can like, share, and comment on this video, as well as subscribing to our channel. This is Dave and Stacie from Core Productions, signing off.